Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our first public information session on the upcoming referendum in the City of Fitchburg. Thank you so much for being here to discuss this important topic. And that referendum, as we may already know, will be appearing on our November 5th ballots. My name is Chad Brecklin, and I serve as the City Administrator here for the City of Fitchburg. In my role as City Administrator, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city and implementing the policy directions of the Mayor and Common Council. During our time this evening, we'll be planning to walk through some slides that provide an overview of the city's challenges, the referendum itself, and the impacts of a vote for or against. Following my presentation, we'll have some opportunity for questions and answers. Up until that point in time, everyone will be muted, and you can be unmuted by raising your hand during the question and answer session. Once we get there, I'll give a few more instructions on how that will specifically work, but for the purposes of the presentation, everyone will remain muted. It's our hope today that you'll walk away from today's discussion with answers to any questions you may have, and that you feel informed heading into the voting booth this fall. Prior to beginning the presentation, I want to acknowledge any elected officials that are with us today. I know Mayor Aradafrada had hoped to attend this session. She is currently in another meeting here at the City Hall, and it's possible she may be able to join us prior to the conclusion of the presentation. I am told that Alder Bill Jetzer is online. Thank you for joining us, Alder Jetzer. You're a District 2 Alder. So what is this all about? The City of Fitchburg has identified a need for additional funding to increase staffing and invest in services to meet the increasing needs of our growing community. This is a topic we've been exploring as a community for many months, actually going back to June of 2023. In particular, some steps we have taken through this conversation include creating an options assessment report that can be found on our city website. That was also published this spring and made available to our community. And we also did a community-wide survey this spring in which a survey was mailed to every single residential household within the City of Fitchburg seeking community input on this very important topic. As we've shared along the way, with the City of Fitchburg community growing, the demand for city services, including our public safety services and other core municipal services such as infrastructure and maintenance, have also increased. In the chart that you see on your screen, we can see one measure of the growth of the City of Fitchburg. In the last 10 years, roughly between 2013 and 2023, Fitchburg's population has increased by nearly 34%. By context, the growth of the City of Fitchburg in comparison to the overall population growth in the state of Wisconsin during that period of time has been quite significant as far as the differences. The state of Wisconsin population as a whole has increased approximately 3% during the same time period. In fact, Fitchburg has been identified as one of the fastest growing communities in the entire state. One important thing to note during this time period is that funding and city staffing have not been able to keep pace with the city's expanding responsibilities as the population has grown. Let's start by taking a look at our public safety services. As you'll notice later in this presentation, one of the significant components of this referendum is improvements in our public safety departments. Between 2013 and 2022, calls in our Fitchburg Fire Department increased by nearly 40%. And as the number of calls have increased, and our part-time paid-on-call firefighting staff has declined, the average response time has also increased. Longer response times can also be attributed in part to increased reliance on mutual aid. When mutual aid is required, departments in neighboring communities help provide a response, which obviously, if they're coming from a neighboring community, can increase the time in which a resident or other individual makes a phone call requesting fire services and when fire services actually arrives on scene. A portion of the funding within this referendum will be utilized to increase base wages for our paid on-call part-time firefighting staff to a base wage of at least $15 per hour, which is designed to help recruit and, just as importantly, retain our existing part-time fire department staff in order to continue to address community public safety needs. Along the same lines, we've also seen an increase in demand for public safety services in our police department. As you can see on this slide, between 2013 and 2022, the City of Fitchburg Police Department saw an approximately 22% increase in police calls for service. As you can imagine, it's becoming increasingly challenging to continue to meet the growing public safety demands with the limited number of staff that we're currently able to fund. With that in mind, the Fitchburg Police Department has applied for and received a grant from our U.S. Department of Justice under the COPS grant program. This grant would fund 3 police officers, partially fund 3 police officers for a 3-year period. Without the additional funding for these 3 positions through the referendum, the police department will likely need to turn down these grant funds and will not be able to hire the 3 officers that could be partially funded with this grant money. As you also may be aware, the city currently has a need for a new police services facility, which is designed to not only meet the needs of lack of space within our current police department, but also within the current city hall. There was a study done in 2015 that identified the need for a new police services facility, and the City Common Council is continuing to move forward with this process, and we anticipate construction will begin in 2025 and be complete in early 2027. The funding within this referendum will allow the city to operate the facility, which includes hiring a building maintenance and custodian person that will help maintain the facility, covering maintenance and operating expenses, and also to be able to build a modest reserve that will prepare us to replace building systems and also accomplish any repairs that will be likely necessary in the future. One thing that's also happening in our growing community is an increase on pressure on traffic and an increase in the need for additional transit services. As the city continues to grow, I think our most recent population estimate puts us at nearly 35,000 people. There continues to be challenges for folks to get within the city of Fitchburg itself on city transit services. And one of the areas that's particularly lacking transit access is the City Hall campus, specifically our library and our senior center. Increasing funding for our transit system will allow the city to invest in enhanced transit and additionally paratransit services within a half mile of any transit routes, which will improve access between residential areas, job centers, and city facilities such as City Hall, the senior center, and the library. The City of Fitchburg has been a careful steward of our budget and the resources that are provided to us by our taxpayers. We continue to do all that we can to make the most out of those tax dollars. And at this point, the needs of the community and the costs associated with addressing those needs have outpaced Fitchburg's current funding capacity, and additional dollars are needed to hire public safety and administrative personnel to address growing operating costs and to invest in transit. Our costs, much like everyone else's, are increasing due to factors related to recruiting and retaining our professional, service-oriented team, inflationary pressures on the cost of equipment, supplies, materials, and other services and operating expenses, again, all associated with maintaining the high level of services that our community appreciates. So what's the ask? The ask is that in order to address these challenges, the City of Fitchburg has placed a referendum on the November 5th ballot. This referendum will ask Fitchburg voters whether or not they support a $3,593,000 increase in the property tax levy going forward to fund 5 sworn police staff, 6 firefighters, 3 additional city staff positions, police services facility operating costs, improvement to public transit, and other city operating costs. So why a referendum? As the preferred option to address this problem? Well, the city's ability to respond to changes and demands for its services is restricted by state legislation. Specifically, that legislation limits property tax levy increases primarily to the percent increase in equalized value from our net new construction. The allowable increases based on net new construction alone are insufficient to meet the increasing needs of our growing Fitchburg community. In order to exceed those state-imposed levy limits, the city must ask approval to do that via a referendum. Why now, you may be asking? Well, like many other Wisconsin communities, growing needs and expenses have outpaced our city's ability to hire staff and make investments to fund solutions. The city of Fitchburg, much like many municipalities in Wisconsin, are now it's becoming much more common to have referendum questions showing up on ballots, similar to what our school districts in the area and throughout the state have had over the last number of years. This, again, is a similar situation in which the state levy limits are creating this situation. So in order to invest in staffing and fund growing operating costs necessary to maintain and improve existing services, additional funding is now required. So next we'll look at the specific question that will be on the ballot. I'll leave it up here on the slide so you can read it. I won't go ahead and read it, but I do want to point out that the language that you see here on this question is the specific language that is required by the Department of Revenue. And again, I'll give a few moments here for folks to take a moment to read the specific question. And then over the next few slides, we'll talk about what this question specifically means. So hopefully that was enough time for folks to work their way through this question. It is quite lengthy, but again, it is in the language and format specified by our Department of Revenue. So if Fitchburg voters were to approve the referendum, the city would be able to institute a one-time permanent $3,593,000 increase in the property tax levy, beginning with property tax bills issued in December of 2024. This will translate to a property tax impact of approximately $65.20 per $100,000 in assessed property value. The impact to a median Fitchburg single-family home valued at $457,800 is estimated to be $298.49 annually, or $24.87 per month. Our people provide services, and the city's ability to address community priorities has been limited by our limited staffing capacity. If the referendum is approved, the city will have the funding necessary to address increased demand for public safety services, including hiring 5 sworn police positions, which specifically includes 3 police officers, 1 lieutenant, and 1 sergeant, and 6 firefighters. Additional staffing in our police department will allow them to assign a full array of staff, including command-level staff, to the 3rd or overnight shift and fully cover peak service hours. It will also ensure the city's ability to accept federal funding, which will again partially offset the cost of the 3 police officers over the next 3 years. Hiring 6 additional full-time firefighters will help maintain and improve the Fitchburg Fire Department's ability to respond to emergencies in a timely manner, address staffing vacancies caused by decreasing part-time staff availability, and assist in reducing overtime and over-reliance on existing staff, which will again improve the reliability of staffing levels within the department. It will also allow us to staff approximately 75% of the annual fire engine coverage hours with full-time firefighters. In addition, funding approved by the referendum will allow the city to pay its part-time firefighters a minimum hourly wage of approximately $15 per hour, again helping to recruit new staff and, just as importantly, retain existing staff. With an approved referendum, the city will also be able to hire a communications director, a human resources generalist, and a finance manager to improve the city's communication and transparency with our community, enhance our recruitment and retention efforts, which of course impact the quality and availability of services anywhere from snow removal to parks maintenance, street maintenance, and public safety, as well as to enhance the management of financial operations of the city, including supporting the finance director and the public works department, grant applications, procurement efforts, sourcing and supply management, and contract management activities. The city will also be able to fund its police services facility operations, fund transit and paratransit system improvements, and improve access between residential areas, job centers, and city facilities, including City Hall, Senior Center, and the library through those investments in our transit system, and of course, continue to fund growing city operating expenses. If the referendum is rejected by a majority of voters on November 5th, the City of Fitchburg will be forced to make difficult decisions about how to address the increasing need for public safety, parks maintenance, communications, and all other services and growing challenges with staffing, recruitment, and retention. It will result in maintaining current funding for staffing and existing city services, but again will limit the city's ability to employ and retain quality staff to continue to provide high-quality services to our residents. Without additional funding, Fitchburg will not be able to hire the additional staff as outlined and create the much-needed capacity that our city team needs to appropriately serve our community. So as mentioned, the referendum will appear on the November 5th ballot. We do encourage everyone in our community to head to the polls on Tuesday, November 5th to vote on this referendum question. Our polling locations will be open at 7 a.m. that day and will close at 8 p.m. Wisconsin voters are required to show an acceptable form of ID in order to vote, and additional voting information, including hours for in-person absentee voting and information about how to request an absentee ballot, can be found on our city's website or on myvotewi.gov. So this completes the presentation. Alder Jetzer, anything you would like to add at all in regards to the material that's been presented so far?
No, I think you've done a great job of presenting here. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attendance as well. So I'll now look to open the floor for questions, and we ask that any person that has a question to only ask one question at a time, and we'll rotate through until everyone who has a question has had an opportunity to answer or to ask their first question. Once everyone has had that opportunity to ask a question, we'll circle back to anyone who may have additional questions. So if you do have a question, I would ask that you please use the raise your hand feature on the link, Zoom link that you're utilizing. Your video will remain off and you will be unmuted when you're recognized to ask your question. And of course, if you have any additional questions following this meeting, I encourage you to visit the URL on our screen, fitchburgwi.gov/referendum, or feel free to reach out to me, the City Administrator Chad Brecklin, either by phone or via email. And that information can be found also on our city website. So with that in mind, are there any questions? Ron, go ahead and answer or ask your question.
Hey, good afternoon. Another hot, warm day here, obviously, for everybody. Thanks for this meeting. I attended a number of the preliminary information meetings plus I was on sustainability committee and a few other things. Have been fairly active. I'm on the homeowners association committee for Swan Creek as well.
Okay.
I guess based on some of the feedback that was presented at the information committee meetings, I'm surprised that the referendum moved forward, to be honest. There's such a negative amount of feedback that it's kind of surprising. So I guess what I'm asking is, if it does not pass, what are we prepared to cut, or is there a prepared set of cuts or a budgetary set of cuts to allow us to add the necessary services, police, fire, emergency, with cuts to other services that may be non-essential?
Yeah, so thank you for your question, and thank you for your service both on any city commissions or committees you might be a part of, and also for your service as a neighborhood representative. In so much as some of the initial feedback that's been received, there was a survey that was sent to residential addresses within the city this spring, and I think there were approximately 2,000 responses to that survey. And that survey did show, in particular, significant support for additional public safety services to be funded through a referendum. And in fact, if I recall correctly, somewhere in the neck of the woods of 50% of the respondents indicated support for at least a $3 million, approximately $3 million referendum, and nearly 50% were also comfortable in their support, at least through the survey, of a $3.6 million referendum. So there has been a deliberate attempt to seek wide community input into this process prior to a decision having been made by our Common Council. And with regards to what would happen if the referendum does not pass, that ultimately is the call of our Common Council. What you will see with this referendum is not designed to close a budget gap, which I think is important to note, that our city staff and our Common Council have been very cognizant of the city's financial position, and have not created a situation where we're looking to close a deficit based upon the funding of existing services. What a no vote will likely result in is a need for the Common Council to further assess the services that it's offering our community, and also potentially look at other revenue sources if they even exist and are available. And then additionally, I think one of the challenges as it relates to the situation is what's really driving this request in large part is the additional need for city staff capacity. City staff capacity is significantly limited as it currently stands, and what this would mean is that there would be no capacity for any additional services, improvements in those services, and could potentially lead to reductions in services as costs continue to escalate just in maintaining the existing level of staffing and services. So a lot of questions would need to be addressed. The city's priorities would certainly need to be evaluated, and this would require further conversation and direction from our Common Council on how they would wish to proceed if the referendum were not to pass. We do have a question that says, where can we find the dollar allocations of the $3.6 million across the various departments? That information is on our city website, and I will also go ahead and review that with you now. Let me pull up the appropriate information, and I will share that with you. So where will the nearly $3.6 million be utilized? Just I'll run down the staff positions that would be hired. That's 3 police officers, and again, those 3 police officer positions would be partially funded with grant money for 3 years. 1 police department lieutenant, 1 detective sergeant, 6 firefighters, an increase in the minimum wage rate paid for our part-time firefighters, a communication director, a human resources generalist, a finance manager, transit improvements, police department facility operating costs, and then other city costs associated with the operating budget and capital expenses. So when we look at the breakdown in its entirety, our public safety staffing, that's the 11 public safety positions, is approximately $1.9 million of this, or about 52% of the overall ask. Transit is approximately $350,000, or about 10% of the referendum amount. The police department operating costs are about $485,000, or about 14% of the overall ask. Non-public safety personnel is about $415,000 in the referendum, or about 11%. And then other operating costs is about $475,000, or about 13% of the overall amount. So that information, if it's not already out on our website, we'll be sure to get it out there so that folks can also take a look at that themselves. But that is the overall breakdown on where the money would be spent. Thank you for that question. Jeff, you have a question.
Good evening, Chad. Thank you again for doing this. My question comes more from a macro standpoint than a specific standpoint. And the question is more related to, how do we know that this is what we truly need in terms of the referendum? And my point is being driven by the fact that it seems the Common Council does approve things on a periodic basis, i.e., we're talking now about a youth center, which we're going to be spending about $3 million on based in the capital budget, or $2 million, and there's other funds coming for that. But I've never heard anything regarding what the operational budget comes from that. Where would that money come from? Or is there going to be another ask for that in the future, again, in order to support that type of thing? And that's a fundamental question. Is the things that have been identified sound very reasonable. In fact, $15 an hour for fire service sounds not compatible with what's going on in the market. That's a service industry type of pay. How do we know that this is going to be enough to get us by for the next few years?
So good question. Thank you, Jeff, for the question. Also, thanks for attending. It's good to at least virtually see you, knowing that our paths haven't crossed in person recently. In regards to the Teen Center, right now where that currently sits is that's in the second phase of a three-phase feasibility assessment. The Common Council is still considering that project, and there obviously is still a third phase of that feasibility study yet to be completed. And we anticipate phase 2 of the feasibility study wrapping up this fall with the report being released, and then obviously Common Council will assess that report and determine what the appropriate next steps are. Obviously, if the city were to implement a teen center, yes, there could be some operating costs associated with that. The full operating model has not yet been identified in exactly how that teen center could be operated if the city council were to elect to proceed with one. And then, of course, there are also different funding sources. The teen center right now is currently planned for a capital cost, which would be largely in the form of probably borrowed money and or some levy money to look at the facility side of things. And what we're talking about largely here tonight on the referendum side is money for our operating budget. That's the staffing that's associated with any of the services that the city provides, and of course the associated operating expenses to do those particular services. And I think the kind of the second point of your question is how do we know that this referendum is going to last for any length of time? Well, we do anticipate that we're probably going to, with this referendum, if it were to pass, we would anticipate that we would not need to ask for another referendum for probably another 3 to 5 years. We did want to be very cognizant of the amount in which was requested in this referendum to ensure that we weren't over asking and therefore having or collecting more in tax revenue than we anticipated needing in the short term. Of course, we could have, the Common Council could have looked to do a referendum with, say, hypothetically speaking, a $5 million ask that may have gotten 7 years into the future before needing perhaps another referendum. But the Common Council has elected to be much more fiscally prudent and only asking for what is necessary in the next 3 to 5 years. Does that answer your questions, Jeff?
He's muted.
Okay. If it doesn't, please feel free to raise your hand again, and we can further clarify that. So the next question is, fire department staffing has declined 20% over 10 years while demand has increased 40%. How does that compare to other city departments? Who makes those decisions? And what is the venue for public input when that happens? Thank you for this question. And I'll talk to this point a bit as it relates to the decline in fire department staffing. So what's largely driving the decline in overall fire department staffing is a decline in our part-time firefighting staff. Historically, as you might imagine, when the city first established its fire department, back when it was a township, it was an all-volunteer fire department. And over time, as the city has grown, the city has continued to rely on transition from volunteer firefighters to paid on-call or paid on-premises, basically part-time firefighters. And then again, over the years, the city has also added full-time career staff, and we have, I think, approximately 18 full-time career staff in our fire department as it stands now. So how we typically look to staff our fire department operations is with a combination of our full-time staff and our part-time staff. And ultimately, what this referendum would allow us to do is to help to kind of flip the script, so to speak, with a higher reliance on our part-time staff to help fill these shifts, or a heavier reliance on overtime with our existing full-time staff to fill the existing shifts. By adding additional firefighters, it'll allow us to rely more significantly at the tune of about 75% of our shift coverage needs on our career firefighting staff. So as you can imagine, with people's busy lives, with all the activities they may have, both personally and professionally, those looking to either volunteer or participate in our fire department, or really any fire department or EMS service on a volunteer or part-time basis, has declined over the years. That is a national trend. It's not unique to Fitchburg, and it is anticipated that that trend is going to continue. When you look at overall city staffing, I believe, and I don't have the graphic in front of me, but I think in the same time period when you're looking at 2013 to 2023, overall city staffing has increased approximately 18 to 19%, which in comparison to a 34% population growth certainly has not been able to maintain the appropriate ratio of staff capacity to population that it serves. In regards to the continued items in your question, who makes the decisions about staffing? Ultimately, there's a process that takes place throughout our operating budget cycles each year. We're currently in the midst of the 2025 operating budget cycle. How that process works is our department heads will submit their budget requests for the upcoming year. And that will be reviewed by city administration, myself, the deputy city administrator, as well as our finance department and finance director, Misty Dodge. And those requests will be evaluated administratively, and then also they will be forwarded to the mayor for review as well. And then ultimately the process has the mayor release their proposed budget. The 2025 operating budget is about to be released next week. That will outline the anticipated budget for the operating side for 2025. And then, you guys took my question away. If anybody wants to come in and comment on that particular budget process, whether it's the 2025 budget or any budget, there are a number of public hearings throughout the process. And in the case of the upcoming budget, there'll be one likely in October. I don't have the date right in front of me, but there will be a public hearing in October. There will also be a public hearing the night of budget adoption, which is November 12th. And members of the public are certainly encouraged to share their feedback on what they prioritize or feel should be included in an operating budget at that time. And of course, residents and taxpayers are always encouraged to reach out to their elected officials and contact them. Probably utilizing the best method would be email, but certainly could contact them by phone and have a conversation in regards to what they feel the elected officials should prioritize for the budget. So I think that largely covers your questions, and if not, again, I'm happy to cycle back and we can do some clarification there. So again, I do want to thank you for your time this evening. I hope you found the information session to be valuable and allows you to make an informed decision when you head to the polls on November 5th. If you do have any additional questions, there will be additional information sessions coming up. I can go over those right now so that folks have those. Give me 1 second here. Those additional dates, there will be an in-person session September 23rd at 6 p.m. at the Redeemer City Church at 5356 King James Way. There will be another in-person session on September 30th at 6 p.m. Hosted at the City on a Hill Church, 2924 Fish Hatchery Road. We're doing another virtual session on October 9th at 12 noon. October 17th will be a third in-person information session, again at 6 p.m. That will be hosted at our Fire Station number 3, 2950 South Scion Road. The final in-person information session is October 21st at 6 p.m. That'll be at the Four Winds Farm, located at 5735 Adams Road. And then the final virtual information session will be October 28th at 6 p.m. There is all kinds of information that's currently out on our city website. When you go to our main page, just a short scroll down, you'll see a tile in the middle of the page that says Referendum. You can click on that and be taken to a number of pieces of information that are out there. And there will also be some direct mailers that will be coming to residential addresses over the next couple of months here, again, sharing additional information regarding the city's referendum ask. And of course, if you have any questions, I encourage you to give me a call, 608-270-4208, or you can also email me at chad.brecklin@fitchburgwi.gov. New question? Excellent. So hang on 1 second. Let me transition to a new screen here. So how much, the question is, how much bonding has already been approved for the police services facility, and what will be the debt service on that annually? That is also a great question, and one that we will have included in our FAQs. That has been authorized for funding up to $40 million. There's $35 million that was previously in our capital improvement plan. The Common Council added an additional $5 million during the most recent capital improvement budget this summer. That $5 million is specifically identified for sustainability and energy efficiency improvements within the facility. At this point in time, only approximately $8 million has been borrowed for this project. I believe $8 or $9 million. I don't have the exact debt service on that specifically at this point in time. We would anticipate borrowing the remainder for this project likely late next year, as we don't anticipate that project is going to break ground until late next year or early 2026. What we will do, though, is we will ensure that what the debt service cost of that annually will be available on our website. I do not want to give incorrect information. And if you do want to, do they have the ability to enter anything into chat for us to see? What I could do is, if you want to put in an email address into the chat, one of us will give you that information within the next couple of days after we've had a chance to connect with our finance director to get the correct amount. Then the follow-up question to that is, where can we find the entire budget, department by department, 2013 versus 2023. Budgets are located on our city website. Let me just navigate there and kind of coach folks to where they could potentially find that information. When you go to our main page, go to the government section, then under departments, select finance. And then when you get to the finance department main page, they have a financial records and reports section on the left-hand side, and then you will be able to see information related to our annual budget. So you can currently see, if I click on the view all under the annual budgets, what's currently on our website is the 2024 operating budget is front and center, as well as the proposed budget. Soon, next week, you'll see the 2025 proposed budget will be there. And then when you click a little bit deeper into there, you can see the past budgets going back all the way to 2008. So that would be one way in which you could select the year in which you'd like to see the operating budget and take a look at that. And those budgets are generally hundreds of pages, and they do break out by department. And of course, if you do take a look at those and have any questions, I would again encourage you to reach out and give us a call or send us an email, and we will certainly do our best to answer those questions. I think that concludes our information session. Again, thank you very much for attending this evening, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.